Forget everything that you knew about macro, man. Season 16 has completely flipped the script, and if you're still playing the same old way, you are actively throwing games. Homeguard buffs, role quest, tower reworks, minion changes, and so much more. Season 16 has been one of the biggest overhauls to the game and to macro that we have literally ever seen. And while you're still trying to navigate all this, other players are abusing these changes for free LP every single game, and we promise by the end of this video, you won't just understand how macro changed in Season 16, you're going to know exactly how to use it to win more games. And how can we be so sure of this fact? Well, because everything that you're about to see, and a whole lot more, is stuff skill cap subscribers have been abusing since the start of the season, all thanks to our brand new Season 16 macro course. This 15-part course walks you through every minute of the game step by step, from the very first wave all the way to closing out games cleanly. And unlike other guides out there on the internet, we focus on teaching you the macro concepts that actually work in solo queue, and most importantly, strategies that you can execute without having to rely on your awful solo queue teammates, which paired with our newly updated Essentials course covers everything you need to master Season 16 for every single role, giving you the complete roadmap to climb this season. And best of all, you can do it all completely risk-free as you're backed up by our rank up guarantee. If you somehow don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount code. So possibly the biggest change that players have yet to become adjusted to from Season 15 to Season 16 is the priority you should place on void grubs based on all the changes the Riot added. In fact, grubs seem to be even stronger than ever since there's turret plates on every tower now, indicating that the objective that helps you destroy structures would become even stronger than before. Except, if you compare the win rate between taking Dragon versus taking grubs, you're going to notice a huge discrepancy there, with Dragon being the much better early objective. So how in the world did grubs go from an absurdly strong objective in Season 15 to supposedly being a whole lot worse now, despite all signs pointing to them being broken with these changes? Well, it has to do with the fact that the early game is significantly less important these days compared to before, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. In Season 15, securing early grubs gave your team a significant tower pushing advantage, which would likely secure you the first tower of the game, which in turn would often guarantee your team feats of strength. These bonus stats then helped you control the map, take an early autocon, and snowball the game from there. The grub's downfall, it doesn't stop there though. First tower is far less important now, but so are turret plates. Before, you had until 14 minutes in the game to secure all 15 plates on the outer towers before they disappeared and the gold was gone forever. Grubs used to be fantastic to try and rush them down before 14 minutes, but as you all know, plates last forever in Season 16. You have all the time in the world to eventually secure plates, which in turn makes grubs even less valuable. Now we're going to talk about towers in a second, but first, let's discuss what your real priority should be in every game. You know how you're often going to trade grubs for Dragon in your games or vice versa? Well, in this season, you should always prioritize Dragons in your games. Now, as you've all experienced, most games do tend to end when one team gets Dragon Soul. If you're ahead, you're usually waiting for Soul to get enough power to finish the match. And if you're behind, well, League's comeback mechanics are pretty good, meaning you always have a chance as long as your opponents haven't taken Soul yet. So as the winning team, getting Dragon early is far better than grubs because you can threaten Soul 5 minutes earlier. And if you're losing, then taking an early Dragon delays the enemy team from securing Soul for another 5 minutes, which is more time to maybe pick up some shutdowns and maybe make a comeback. Now, as for grubs, they should be more of a luxury objective this time around. It's not that you don't want to take them, but more so that you shouldn't go out of your way to secure them in this meta. For example, supports used to always recall before 8 minutes to go towards the grub fight. That shouldn't be something you do every single game these days. It's especially true because of the way that towers have fundamentally changed in Season 16. As you all know, the overgrowth mechanic builds up on towers for a huge burst of instant damage, but more importantly, since all towers have plates now, then for the rest of the game you have to play around the turret plating mechanic. Now, if you haven't learned how this works yet, basically it just makes it so that each time you destroy a turret plate on a tower, they get a temporary buff. This gives them extra armor and extra magic resistance just for a little bit, and this also scales based on the amount of players that are around when a plate falls. So towers are extra durable if you try to kill them with more players around you. This combination of upfront damage from overgrowth buildup and towers getting tanky tankier as plates go down, encourages players to not just sit there hitting a tower for too long. After 1 or 2 plates, the tower is much tankier, making it much more meaningless to sit there hitting it unless you're in the late stages of the game. Now, this is the reason for why grubs are technically worse this season. They're meant to help you destroy towers by giving you extra DPS as you hit them, but this is counterintuitive to how you want to play these days. And as a general rule, you should be aiming to destroy turrets in 2 or 3 attempts rather than all at once. You use the overgrowth to take 1 or 2 plates, then come back later and take 1 or 2 more, and then you finally destroy the tower later on. But it turns out the biggest threat to towers isn't necessarily overgrowth. It's the new, overpowered home guards a lot of the player base has been complaining about. Players are getting back out onto the map so dang fast that it's hard to leave your turrets alone for more than a couple of seconds before someone's already back there ready to destroy them. But what most players haven't realized yet is what home guards actually changed when it comes to macro decisions in lane. In previous seasons, if you forced your opponent to base, you could gain some huge advantages pushing the lane, taking turret plates, and denying them minions. But now, more often than not, this can actually be a big mistake as home guards allow players to get back to lane so much faster this season, which is why good players are already learning and adapting to the new Season 16 timers. And here's what you need to know. It takes around 12 seconds to get back to mid lane from the fountain, and it takes about 17 seconds to get back to either top or bot lane tier 1. Combine this with the 8 seconds of recall, and the time it takes for somebody to base and get back to lane is night and day compared to last season. And this is where many players really do slip up now, as although you might be playing well in lane and forcing your opponent to base, in a lot of cases it can actually end up worse for you now, especially with the new turret changes that we just mentioned, as although that first plate is so easy to take or that overgrowth feels so incredibly satisfying to pop, before you know it, your opponent is already back in lane with full health and an item advantage, while you're now stuck in lane. So just to put this all into perspective, after all of these things, let's say you watch your opponent complete their base in mid. This means that they're going to be back in lane in roughly 12 seconds. And since it takes about 8 seconds for your own recall to go off, you technically only have 4 seconds of free time before you need to base, since if you haven't completed it by then, it could be canceled by your opponent. So the next time you force somebody out of lane, don't get greedy now. You do not have as big of an advantage as you once did in Season 15. Often just pushing as fast as possible and then matching their base is, sadly, the best play you can make nowadays. So one of the main changes to Season 16 was that, as we know, games are now starting a whole lot sooner, with minions spawning at 30 seconds and camps now at 55 seconds. And this single change is causing so many players to get caught out by early ganks. And yet there's a super simple way to ensure that you never die to a gank in the early game, and it all starts with the most overpowered ward in the whole game. This right here at Raptors. And this early Raptor ward should ideally be dropped by your mid laner, but even your top laner or jungler can do it as well. Now, why this is so important is that this ward tells you everything that you need in the early game. What camp the enemy jungler started in, where they're pathing, and which particular lane needs to be worried about early ganks. And here's specifically how this works. The second you see the enemy jungler on this ward, press tab. Every jungle camp in the game is worth 4 CS. So let's say that I'm on blue team. If the enemy jungler shows on this ward with 12 CS, they've cleared 3 camps and are pathing up. If they have 8 CS, or they're just starting Raptors, then they're obviously pathing down. Red side works the exact same way, it's just mirrored, which this then brings us to the most important early game timer that you have to be aware about. 2 minutes and 55 seconds, as this is now the time that Scuttle Crab spawns, with many junglers finishing their clear at around this time or slightly before. A neat trick to track this even easier as a laner is to use the cannon minion as a landmark. Once this dies, you should look to ward, as that will be around 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which will cover you from any potential early ganks. The next timer you need to know is 3 minutes and 45 seconds, which replaced last season's 4 minutes and 20 second timer. As once you know where a jungler starts, their early pathing becomes incredibly predictable, as 3 minutes and 45 seconds is when their first camp respawns, which instantly tells you where they're likely to be on the map next, typically giving you the green light to look for any aggressive plays. And if you find timers like this interesting, they kind of lay out the game for you, we have an entire video breaking down the most important timers that you need to know for Season 16 inside our brand new macro course. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive discount and get instant access to the full 15-part macro course today. And speaking of timers, there's an even more critical one most of the player base really isn't taking advantage of yet, and it has to do with something you've probably noticed this season, way fewer solo laners are running teleport. For quite a few seasons now, we had teleport be almost mandatory for top and mid laners to take, usually resulting in 4 teleports in each game. But due to homeguards being so effective at getting players back to lane, combat summoners are far more frequent than before. This is something you can actually exploit in solo queue by tracking TP. One of the most common fundamentals of macro is to always put the player with TP on the opposite side of the objective. So if Baron was the next objective to contest, you'd have your top laner with TP push bot. The goal is to be able to have pressure in all 3 lanes while still being able to contest the objective with all 5 players if needed. Now in previous seasons, this wasn't something you really had to think about all that much. Because both top and mid were likely running teleport as a summoner, there was almost always someone on your team with it available. So you always had someone who could side lane away from the objective. In Season 16, teams are going to often find themselves without a teleport in draft. Instead, top laners rely on the free one they get once their quest is complete. But this is what you can take advantage of. If you watch any competitive play, you're going to often still see both top laners almost always running TP, and the mid laners still run it in most games as well. The reason for this is pretty simple. Remember, we spent a while discussing how dragons are without a doubt the best win condition right now since Otacon and feats were removed, and dragons spawns every 5 minutes. Pro teams know that if you don't have TP up for dragon, then you would just lose so many side lane waves and turret plates every time the objective spawns. You can see how there's usually 2 players in the furthest lane, and then they both TP to dragon to make sure no farm is lost or their tower gets threatened. Now obviously, we're not playing competitive professional games, but that doesn't mean this concept isn't important for solo queue. Keep in mind that especially in lower elo brackets, players are running combat summoner spells far more often. So unlike before, when there's always a TP or 2 up, you usually only have to track a single teleport from the enemy top laner, which is on a massive 7-minute cooldown. Here's how you can take advantage of this. Their TPs do not match with every dragon spawn. So if you ever see the enemy top laner TP to a fight, then you should time it in the chat. And make sure you do the Control-A plus Control-C chat tech to copy it quickly so you can paste that timer later. Then once dragon is close to respawning, your team will know they have a massive advantage since the enemy TP will have a 2-minute cooldown remaining. If you push top lane aggressively as dragon is spawning, the enemy top laner is not going to have any choice but to stay in that lane despite not having a way to get to dragon quickly. Then if your team has TP, the player pushing can quickly join the fight, guaranteeing a 5v4 advantage. Or if the enemy top just decides to walk to the fight normally, your teammate can push multiple waves aggressively in top, take 2 or 3 turret plates, and then TP to the dragon anyway, getting a huge gold lead. You could also decide as a team to give up a single dragon to allow that teammate to take even more plates and waves in that uncontested lane if you have an ally who's really good at pushing or scales really well, like maybe Kale. Basically, timing TP is actually useful again in games where your opponents only have the free teleport from the top quest available. The cooldown is so long, it'll rarely be up for the most important objective in the game, which can give your team a huge advantage. Misunderstanding how to value the quest rewards is without a doubt one of the biggest hurdles most players are really going to have to get through in this new meta. Just because the top quest gives you a free TP, it doesn't mean there aren't consequences to not taking it as a base summoner spell with a lower cooldown. And playing around all the quests in general is definitely where a whole lot of players are struggling the most this season. As we all know, you gain points toward your role quest by farming minions, killing champions, taking turret plates, and passively over time as the game progresses. All of which then gets doubled when in your assigned lane. So naturally, most players come to the obvious conclusion that you should stay in your lane until your quest is completed, right? Well, don't get me wrong, finishing a role quest ASAP is definitely important, but the majority of players are focusing on these quests so insanely hard that they actively end up griefing themselves and their team because of it. So give me a sec to show you what I mean here. Zoe starts roaming to top, but doesn't get there in time, with her Darius already going down to the gank. So she makes the correct macro play and stays up there to collect the wave so it doesn't all die to the turret for free, and is even able to chase down the Nasus and pick up a free kill, at which point she then pushes the next wave to make sure it crashes. But here's where things get absolutely crazy. Watch Darius. Instead of pathing to mid, collecting the wave, and defending the turret, what does he do? He walks straight up to top. Why? Well, as he explains, he can't go mid because he hasn't completed his role quest.
Yeah, you're right. If he goes mid lane with quest for one single wave, I guess the game's just over. That's totally right, bro.
What should happen, and what would usually happen prior to Season 16, was that Darius would path mid, collect the wave, and then walk back up to top, while Zoe bases and then heads back to mid for the next wave. This way, Darius gets to soak the wave, Garen doesn't get any plates, and no resources on the map would go to waste. And we're seeing this more and more this season. Players are either hesitant to rotate or even refusing to move to objectives like grubs or dragon, all because they think leaving lane will set them too far behind. Well, here's the reality. Your role quest will complete itself if you're just playing the game normally. Don't let it ever impact your decision making. If the right play is to rotate, then rotate. If the right play is to contest an objective, contest it. And it's honestly as simple as that. Macro doesn't have to be complicated, which is exactly why we built our Season 16 macro course. This 15-part course breaks down macro step by step in a way everybody can understand and apply in their games regardless of their teammates, focusing solely on the concepts that actually work in your games at your elo. If you want to learn more about any of the topics that we've discussed, as well as learn even more, be sure to check out the link in the description below to gain access to a one-time exclusive discount code today. Completely risk-free, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. For now though, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see ya in the next video.